Hello and welcome to yet another Affiliate Hustle live training. So today we are going to discuss yet another training, and I'm really glad that you're here because today we are going to focus on push ads. So if you were here last time out, then you saw how we discussed the CPA rule for native ads. All right, so last time through we discussed that, the CPA rule for native ads, and today we are kinda doing the same thing, but then of course for push ads. So we also have a CPA rule for push ads, but it's called different and it works different, and it is completely something else, just like push ads and push traffic is completely different from native traffic as well. All right, so a little quick recap of the CPA rule when used on native. Why do we use the CPA rule? Because we want to make data-driven decisions. I'm actually going to write this down because this is quite important. So a couple of takes from the CPA rule on native, which we discussed last time. First of all, we want to make data-driven decisions and not emotional driven decisions. And apparently I can spell. All right, so we want to make data-driven decisions and not emotional-based decisions. Let's make this a little bit bigger. All right, so we have that. What is the other part that we discussed last time? That is right, the law of averages. All right, so the law of averages. All right, so what does the law of averages tell us? Let's see if anybody knows the answer. The law of averages, we discussed it last week during the CPA rule of native. Basically, the law of average means that there's always an average in everything, all right? So the law of average tells us that at some point, the data keeps getting more stable, all right? We used the example of the coin toss last time. So if you toss a coin 4 times, and it falls on head only 1 time, you could say, okay, the probability of the coin landing on heads is going to be 25% because it's 1 out of 4 times. But then if you do that same test over 10,000 coin tosses, you will see that that percentage will get closer and closer and closer to that 50%, which of course is the actual chance of landing on head. So the law of averages basically tells us that the bigger the sample size, the more accurate the average is, right? So that's also an important one, why we need a CPA rule. Let me actually put that right here. Why do we need a CPA rule / 3-day rule? Because the 3-day rule is what we're talking about today. All right, so why do we need a CPA rule? First of all, we want to make data-driven decisions and not emotional-driven decisions. And then we also have that law of averages. All right, so these are the main points why we want to make clear lines, clear rules for ourselves and our campaign, so that we know for sure that we're doing the right thing and we're not basically making decisions on emotion or making decisions based on assumptions, right? We want to eliminate those kind of decisions and let the data tell us what we need to do. Okay, while keeping that in mind, we're gonna basically discuss the 3-day rule or the CPA rule on push. Let me delete these. And right here, we're gonna say push traffic. All right, so we have the push traffic right here. Perfect. So as you might know, there are 5 different stages in the affiliate marketing. This is the same for every traffic source. So no matter whether you run native, push, banner, pop-up, no matter what it is, we always have the 5 pillars. So pillar 1, whoa, pillar down. Pillar 1. All right. So pillar 1 is the technical preparation. All right. So this is setting up your software preparation. Setting up your software, setting up your tracker, connecting your tracker with the traffic source and the affiliate network. This all falls under the technical preparation. Next up, we have pillar 2, which is the testing period. All right. So this is what we're going to focus on today, the testing period, in which you're going to see, okay, is this offer converting? Is my landing page okay? Do I have the right creatives? Are they performing well? This is all part of pillar 2. Then we go to pillar 3, which is the optimization. All right, so we have pillar number 3, the optimization phase, where we're basically going to say, okay, we have some testing data. Now we want to see how we can improve that data so that we keep running with the best creatives, as well as the best landing page, the best placements. All right, so this is all done in pillar 3, where we really optimize the assets that we have. After the optimization pillar or periods, we go to pillar number 4, which is the scaling pillar or period. And this is basically the point where you have the best working landing page, creatives, etc., etc., etc. And now we want to basically increase the amount of spend on our campaign, right? So that we can increase our revenue and increase our profit as well. Little note here, I do not say increase the ROI because that's not the goal during the scaling. Actually, the ROI goes down, but that is something for another live training. And after pillar 5, we also have after pillar 4, we also have pillar 5, which is business structure. All right, so business structure. This pillar number 5, is not applicable to everybody that's watching this right now. So it may or may not be applicable for you. When is it applicable for you? Well, there are some small parts that is valuable for every media buyer, whether you're solo or whether you have a complete business, whether you're the boss of the business or just an employee. There are some parts of business structure that is always useful to know and to understand. And then we also have some parts about the business structure, which is really more a part of the CEO of the company, right? The big boss of the company. You definitely want to have good business structure within your business, which might not be very applicable to you if you're just an employee. All right, but we're not going to focus on pillar 5 today, because today we are going to focus on pillar number 2, which is the testing phase. All right, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Pillar 2, testing. That's what we are going to talk about today. So we want to have a CPA rule, right? Just like on native, on push as well. We want to have a CPA rule so that we don't have to make those emotional-based or assumption-based decisions. We want to make our decisions based on the actual data. So to do so, we need a rule that's actually gonna work. And if you apply the same rule that we use on native, if you apply that on push, then something is going wrong. All right, and I'm going to explain you why that doesn't work. Native has quite expensive traffic if you compare them to a source like push. And therefore, because the traffic is more expensive, you probably want to promote offers that have a bit higher offer payout, right? On push, the traffic is quite cheap if you compare it to native, so we are able to run offers with a lower payout as well. However, with the native CPA rule, we don't give our placements that much space or room, whatever you want to call it, to basically stabilize the data. All right? We need a big enough sample size to stabilize the data, and we have learned that the CPA rule that we use on native is not doing that. If we're following the CPA rule, then it doesn't work on push. It just doesn't work. We don't have enough data to actually tell whether that placement is working or not. So what is the result if we use the CPA rule on push? Either we close a placement that might have some potential because we don't give it enough of a sample size, or we keep running a placement even though it actually doesn't have any potential. All right. So instead of the CPA rule, we're using a different rule when we are promoting on push, which is called the 3-day rule. I'll write it down. The 3-day rule. This is a very important one. So with the 3-day rule, you can basically test any placement within 3 days. And when I say test the placement, I mean accurately test it with a big enough sample size so that you can actually say whether the placement is working or not. All right. So here it already is a little bit different than on native. On native, we don't set an X amount of days. On native, we basically say, okay, doesn't matter how long it takes, but when it hits this amount in the minus, in the negative, then we are going to shut it down. Forget about all that because we're going to take a completely different approach for a completely different traffic source, to be honest. So on push, we are using the 3-day rule. So how does it work? Let's say we have one placement, right? I'm going to put it differently right here. Placement 1. All right. Let's set it here. Placement 1. I hope that's clear that way. All right. So on that placement 1, we want to start spending some money and generating some data, but we want to make sure not to keep on spending it for too long if it doesn't work. But also we want a big enough sample size to actually test this placement. All right. So the 3-day rule. What are we gonna do? Over 3 days, we are going to spend 3 times CPA per day. And at the end of the 3 days, that's the point where we are going to decide whether it's going to work or not. All right. So let's actually do it like this. Day 1, day 2, and day 3. All right. So we have these 3 days. All right, let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. All right, so we have the 3 days. Each of these days, like I said, we want to spend 3 times CPA. Let's just set a CPA right here. I'm going to say CPA is $1 to keep it a little bit simple in the calculations. All right, so the CPA is exactly $1, which means on day 1, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do that. On day 1, we are spent is $3. All right, because 3 times CPA, 3 times $1 is $3. So on day 1, we are spending $3. And the same goes for day 2. Spent is $3. And the same goes for day 3. Spent is $3. All right. Now, when do we make up the balance? When are we going to say, okay, this placement is working, this placement is not working? We do that at the end of day 3. All right. So let's do it like this. balance. I'm going to call it the balance, all right, because we're going to make up the balance. Let's make it bigger because it's important. So at this point, we have ran this campaign for 3 days. We have spent $3 on this placement on day 1, on day 2, and on day 3. So in total, we spent $9. At the end of day 3, we're going to see how many conversions came in during those 3 days. So we have spent $9, which is 9 times CPA, right? 9 times the payout of our offer of today, which means that right here, when we make up the balance, if, or let's put it this way, less than 9 conversions, so less than 9 conversions, what are we going to do when we have less than 9 conversions? We are going to kill it. Kill placement. All right. Because we have spent $9, we need 9 conversions for break even, right? If we get 9 times the CPA of $1, we receive $9 as revenue. We also have spent $9, so that would mean break even. Which means that if we have less than 9 conversions, then we're not break even. Basically, we're losing money. For example, if you have 8 conversions, you have a revenue of $8, but you've spent $9. So we are going to kill the placement. All right. So there is no such thing like in native, like how many times CPA have I spent? What is my CPA rule? No, it's very simple. If you've spent 3 times CPA per day over 3 days, and at the end of 3 days, you have less than 9 conversions, kill it. All right? Because you gave it 3 different days. You gave it enough room by saying I'm going to spend 9 times CPA in total, 3 different days with 3 times CPA per day. So it has enough data to stabilize the conversions. So if you're not profitable on that placement by the end of day 3, if you have less than 9 conversions, we are going to kill it. All right? If we have more than 9 conversions, then we are going to keep it on, right? We are profitable. If we have 10 conversions, we have $1 profit. So we're going to keep the placement. Keep placement. And of course, we want to optimize and we're going to start worrying about other things. But if we focus solely on the testing, we would just say, okay, we're going to keep this placement because it's profitable. All right, so we know what to do when we have less than 9 conversions. We know what to do when we have more than 9 conversions. What do we do when we have exactly 9 conversions? All right, I'm actually going to put that in the middle, right? Oh, I can't. I'm sorry, guys. Mind map is a little new for me every now and then. So 9 conversions. What are we going to do? We're going to test it again. Test again. All right. So I'm actually going to see if I can drag it in the middle now. I can. Perfect. All right. So in the case we have exactly 9 conversions, we're going to test again. All right. So we're going to do day 1 again, or actually day 4 it would be, but you get what I mean. Day 5 and day 6. Over these 3 days, we're going to do the same thing as the first 3 days. So on day 4, we spent $3 in this case, but 3 times your payout. On day 5, we spent 3 times CPA, and on day 6, we spent 3 times CPA. And on those 3 days, we should generate at least 9 conversions. So once again, after day 6, we're going to make up the balance again. We're going to say, okay, less than 9 conversions, we're going to kill it. Exactly 9 conversions, we're going to do yet another test, and more than 9 conversions, we're going to keep that placement and start optimizing on it. All right? So that is basically the flow of the 3-day rule. All right? Now, excuse me, I understand, and I do get this question quite a lot. When people say, Stanley, I don't have the budget to spend 3 times CPA per placement per day. I just don't have the budget to do that, because if I do that, then after 2 or 3 weeks, I have burned through all my money and I have to wait for my payout, and now my campaign is paused because I can't spend any money. Right, so that's not what we want, all right? The 3-day rule is not here to basically get you bankrupted or anything, right? So in that case, in the case you have a budget that is not sufficient to do the 3-day rule on every placement that you have, right? That can happen. In that case, we still want to keep the theory about the 3-day rule, but we're stretching the 3 days over a longer period, all right? So in the end, if this takes you 3 days or a week or 2 weeks, it doesn't matter, as long as you spend that $9 in total on that placement. And as soon as you hit that $9 or 9 times CPA in total, right? Then you can make up the balance. So the 3-day rule is basically there because the 3 days is the ideal time frame to do it. All right. You don't want to test a campaign over a month, because the data that you had at the beginning of that month might not be as relevant anymore. All right. So we don't want to see campaigns that are in the testing period for months and months to come. All right. We want to basically shorten that testing period as much as we can. But once again, if your budget doesn't allow you to run as aggressive as the 3-day rule, stretch it out a little bit. It doesn't really matter if one placement does meet it and one other placement doesn't, as long as you give every placement the time and spend of at least 3 days and at least 9 times CPA. By the way, if you're watching this and you feel like, I'm looking at this mind map and Stanley is talking, but I just really don't know what he's talking about, feel free to post your questions down in the comments so that we can discuss them during this live training. All right. So that is basically the structure of the 3-day rule. So let's actually draw it out and see what happens when we have a couple different placements. All right, so I'm gonna remove all this for a second. Whoop, there we go. I am gonna remove this for a second, and we're actually gonna keep the CPA of $1 just because it's easy to calculate. All right, so I'm gonna add a couple of placements. Can't I just duplicate this? Nope. Okay, no worries. Placement 2 and placement 3. Let's do 3 placements for now. All right, so I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Placement 2 and placement 3. All right. So on day 1, we are gonna spend 3 times CPA per placement. By the way, I am going to assume for this specific explainer that we have the budget to do a actual 3-day test as it is meant to be. All right, so I'm going to assume that we have the budget. Once again, if you have a smaller budget and you can sustain the 3-day rule, then it doesn't matter if it takes you a little bit longer. Once again, shouldn't be a lot longer, but if it takes a little bit longer, that is fine. But I'm going to assume that we have the right budget to promote this campaign. So on day 1, we are going to spend $3 on each placement. All right, 3 times CPA on each placement. So that means that in the end, we have $3 spent here, $3 spent here, and $3 spent here. So at the end of day 1, we have spent $9 in total already. All right. Maybe we do, maybe we don't get some conversions. Let's try this out. All right. So for placement 1, let's say on day 1 we have what shall we say? 2 conversions. All right. 2 conversions. Perfect. On placement 2, let's say placement 2 actually has 4 conversions. 4 conversions. And placement 3 is exactly in the middle with 3 conversions. All right. So basically, you could say, and I do have a lot of people asking me this specific question. Stanley, why do we need a 3-day rule if we have the same thing after 1 day? Because right now, and they're not lying, it's true. Right now, you can say, okay, I spent $3 here and only got 2 conversions. So I'm $1 negative. Right here, I spent $3 as well, and I've got 4 conversions. So I'm profitable. I'm in the green, right? And placement 3 is break even, so maybe that one needs another day. But why can I not turn off placement 1 and start scaling placement 2 or start optimizing it? Well, just like we talked about last week, but I'm going to repeat it, we have to do with the law of averages. So the bigger the sample size, the more stable the data. At this point, especially with a payout that is not as high, right? A $1 payout is not a very high payout. So especially with a payout that's a little bit lower, we need to give it more space. Because if we would turn off placement 1 right now, we might turn off a very successful placement. But we just don't know it yet because the sample size is so small. So at this point, we don't want to make any decisions that we might regret later, which is why we continue, all right? So we're gonna do day 2. And I'm just gonna do it like this. I hope it's clear for everybody. So day 2 is another $3 spent. And let's say on day 2, we actually have 4 conversions on this one. All right. So you can already see now we have 6 conversions over 2 days with $6 spent. So this placement all of a sudden is break even again. And you might say, yeah, Stanley, you just write that down because you want to show us that it's possible, but that would never happen. That's not true. This would actually happen. Once again, especially with payouts that are not extremely high, it's going to fluctuate more. All right? So we want a big enough sample size. I cannot stress this enough. We want a big enough sample size. We're going to do the same thing for placement 2. And give it another $3, and let's say it has 3 conversions now. All right, I'm just gonna shorten it. You get what I mean. And on placement 3, we're gonna spend another $3 as well during day 2. And this one gets, give me something, 1 conversion. All right. Cool. So on placement 1, we have now $6 spent and 6 conversions. So we're on break even. On placement 2, we have also $6 spent, of course, and 7 conversions. So it's still slightly profitable, but it's less profitable than last day if we're looking percentage-wise, all right? Because now we only have 3 conversions. And placement number 3 only has 1 conversion on day 2, so that one is now in the red. And that's how fast it can go, right? So at day 1 we were break even. Day 2, all of a sudden we're minus 2 times CPA. But it's not a shocker yet. Once again, we're dealing with smaller payouts, so the sample size need a little bit bigger, because with a low payout, if you're gonna test with the CPA rule like we're using on native, then you would probably somewhere along the line turn off all of these placements, as they probably meet the minus 1 times CPA somewhere along the route, all right? Which is why on push we want to test a little further. So let's just finish this up and give it day 3 with another $3 spent on all of these. $3. And whoops, right here. And another $3. All right, perfect. So now they have spent $9 on all of them. Let's give this one 3 conversions. And let's give this one 3 conversions. And let's give this one 3 conversions. All right, so very stable day 3. All right, so let's make up the balance. All right, on all of them we have $9 spent because that is the 3-day rule. We're going to spend 3 times CPA per day over 3 days, which means that we have spent $9 on all of them. All right, I think that's clear. Then we have to look at the conversions. So right here on day 1, on placement 1, we had 2 conversions, plus the 4 of day 2, plus the 3 of day 3, brings us to 9 conversions. Remember what that means? That means we're going to break even, and breaking even means we have to do another test, right? And we cannot say, okay, we're going to test it with one-time CPA, because that doesn't stabilize the data enough. So we need to do another 3-day test so that we can find out whether this placement has potential or not. For placement 2, we had 4 conversions on day 1, 3 conversions on day 2, and 3 conversions on day 3. So it's slight, but we are making a profit. We had 10 conversions in total, giving us $1 profit of this placement. And basically, that is, what is it, like 15% ROI or something. So that is not that much yet, but it shows potential, all right? If we can have 15% ROI over 3 days without optimizing our creatives, without optimizing our placements, without optimizing and maybe even split testing our landing page, maybe we can even split test our offer page. So there's still so much in the complete flow that we can try to improve, so that we can say, okay, we had 10 conversions, we had 9 times CPA spent, we had a small profit, so it's good enough to keep on running with placement 2, start the optimization process so that we can increase our profit, all right? And then we have placement 3. So placement 3 had 3 conversions day 1, 1 conversion, and 3 conversions day 3. So in total, 7 conversions against 9 times CPA spent means that we are not profitable on this placement and that we actually lost 2 times CPA. So what are we going to do? We are going to turn this placement off. We don't see enough potential. We have tested it over 3 different days. So also the argument, my offer doesn't promote on a Sunday. Really, I've heard this. It doesn't work, right? Because we tested it over 3 days. So it's more stable. If there even is such a thing as a day on which you do not make profit for whatever reason, maybe religion or maybe culture or maybe it's a holiday in that specific geo that you don't know of, if that's the case, you still have those 2 extra days which can basically stabilize your data once again. So at that point you can say, okay, I've tested it over 3 days and now I can see maybe that one day was a little bit off, but the other 2 days fixed it. So let's actually continue with this placement. And then you're doing a real data-driven, you're making a real data-driven decision, right? So that's where we want to go to. In this case, we only had 7 conversions. So let's say this day 2 would have been a holiday or anything, right? So it only had 1 conversion because the whole country is doing something else and we didn't know about that. The other 2 days had 3 conversions, so break even. So if that holiday wasn't there, maybe we were able to break even, maybe not, right? We shall never know. But it might have been closer than what we've got right now. But if you look at day 1 and day 3, it's still not extremely good. We only had 3 conversions on each day. If you look at it day by day 1 was break even, day 3 was break even, only day 2 we lost our money. But those other 2 days are break even, which is not extremely good. If this placement was extremely good, And this is indeed, day 2 is indeed a holiday that we didn't know of and nobody spends any time on their phone or on their PC. Could be, right? I have never experienced it, but could be. All right? If this was a really good placement, then this would have been 5 or maybe even 6 conversions. And this would have been, well, let's do it a little less, 4 conversions or 5 conversions, right? And then you can see it's already at 11. So it goes really fast, and it doesn't matter if this day is an off day, as long as the other 2 days can basically compromise the difference, right? They can push the average up again, even though that day 2 drags it down. So if it's able to do that, sure, go ahead. Either run another test or keep on running on that placement and start optimizing and scaling. That's totally fine. But if it isn't able to do that, so if it is 3 conversions on day 1, 1 conversion on day 2, and 3 conversions on day 3, even though this might be one special day in which nobody sells anything, then these 2 days should get that average up again, but they don't, so we're still gonna kill it. All right? So that is basically the way that you use the 3-day rule to start testing your push campaigns. And I'm going to repeat one more time. If you don't have the budget to do this, if you feel like, Stanley, I do not have the money to spend 3 times CPA per day over 3 days on all my placements, then rather extend the testing period a little bit, right? I rather see you spend 9 times CPA over a placement in a week, for example, and then make up the balance at the end of that week. Or you could also say, I'm not gonna run on as many placements as I'm gonna do, right? So instead of a run on network, you could say, okay, I'm gonna use a whitelist or I'm gonna use a blacklist to make that list of placements smaller so that my budget can be smaller as well, and this campaign is more sufficient to my cash flow. All right, so there are all kinds of ways to modify the campaign to your cash flow. And of course, you can modify the campaign slightly to a certain extent to your cash flow, but it all begins with picking an offer, right? If you have a cash flow that's not where you want it to be, then you might want to look at lower payout offers. Whereas if you have a huge budget, then the higher payout offers are available to you as well, because you have sufficient money to actually test that campaign. All right, so if you don't have the budget to test all your placements within 3 days, either extend that 3 days a little bit or go with a lower payout offer, or go with a whitelist or a blacklist instead of a run on network so that you can reduce your placement count. All right. Another really helpful thing while we're talking about budget anyway is that with the 3-day rule, you can calculate your testing budget. All right, so I'm going to show you that right now. Actually, we're going to use Excel for this. So let me go to my drive real quick, and then we're going to open up a new, where is it? New. All right, Google Sheets, perfect. All right. So we're going to calculate the budget according to the 3-day rule. There are a couple things that we need to know. So I'm going to put them in line right here. First of all, we need to have the CPA, right? We've been working with $1 all day, so let's just say the CPA is still $1. We're still promoting the same offer, all right? And then what else do we need to know? We need to have the placement count. All right, so how many placements do we have that we want to test? All right, so if you're doing a run on network, this can really be a big number, and you might not know the exact number from the start of your campaign. If you're using a whitelist, you have the exact count of placements that you're gonna run on. All right, let's just say we have 60 placements. All right, we have a whitelist, and on that whitelist are 60 placements. All right, so how do we calculate our testing budget? First of all, we have 3 days. So I'm going to put this right here. Days of testing is 3, right? And how much times the CPA do we spend per day? That's also 3. So CPA spent per day is also 3. All right. Knowing all these metrics, we can calculate the testing budget. So let me put it right here. Testing budget. All right. So 1 times CPA, right? Times the CPA spent per day. So now we have $3, which is what we're going to spend per placement per day. How many days of testing do we have? We have 3 days of testing. So we're going to do that. We're going to do the CPA times the CPA spent per day times the days of testing brings us at 9, which is exactly what we're going to spend per placement during the 3-day period, right? So $9 times the amount of placements is our calculation. So for this specific campaign, if we have a payout of $1 and 60 placements, and we're going to follow the 3-day rule, then we need a testing budget of $540. All right. So you can do this calculation for yourself. The only things that you really need is the payout, so the CPA, and the placement count. If you know those 2 things, you can calculate what is your optimal testing budget. All right. Now, what if you don't have that $540? What if you only have $450? Then we could say, okay, we're going to stretch that time a little bit so that we can receive that first payout before we're actually running out of money. So that might be an option. You can extend the 3-day rule a little bit. And I think I gave you some other solutions to that as well. So that is going to be it for the 3-day rule. So if you do have any questions about the testing period on push, it can be related to the 3-day rule, but maybe you have a question about something else about the testing period for push traffic, make sure to drop them in the comments below so that I can help you with your question, answer your question, and so that everything is 100% clear for you, because it is very important that we do the testing period right. We want to give each placement enough time and enough spent to have a good, stable average. We want the data to be stable. And as long as our data is not stable, we cannot say that a placement is or is not going to work. All right? So we need stable data. So we need to follow the 3-day rule. All right. I don't see any questions coming in, so I'm going to assume that everything is clear for you and that you understand how the 3-day rule works, how you can calculate your budget, why we need the 3-day rule, etc., etc. So that is going to be it for this Affiliate Hustle live training, but make sure to stay tuned, as next week there will be a new live video. I'll see you there.